daunting if you're in the process of making the jump from editing audio podcasts to video podcasts. You know how to edit audio podcasts, but you're unsure about including video in your edit because of your lack of video experience. But you really have nothing to worry about because based on this list of shared skills, audio editors actually would make incredible video editors. Adding video into the equation isn't nearly as challenging as you may think, and by the end of this video, you'll become confident and ready to take on the video podcast edit. This video is sponsored by Riverside. The first big similarity between audio and video editing that will crank up your confidence is found in this example. In my own experience, when first editing an interview or talking head, or even this YouTube video, for example, the first thing I do is create a radio edit. And a radio edit at its core is the main content, not including unwanted silences or filler words or extra takes, structured in the correct order. And if you skip this step, it could easily create chaos in your timeline. If the content isn't in the correct order, or you have sections that need to be cut down, you've now created more unnecessary work to deal with. You're gonna need to shift around all of the audio and video clips simultaneously, which thankfully in Riverside's editor is not difficult at all. It's just not the best practice. But if you do find yourself having to shift a full already edited block of content elsewhere in your timeline, ensure that you toggle this collapse tracks icon, then navigating to the audio track, selecting this move icon to click and drag a full segment around. The biggest benefit of completing and revising a radio edit first, before adding music, B-roll, or sound effects, is that you reduce the chances of redundant work. I've already added B-roll clips to this section, but I've decided I no longer need it. Well, now I've just done a bunch of extra work that I could have avoided had I revised my radio edit first. Before television existed, we had radio, audio only. So the term radio edit is inspired by the old-time radio era where people could tune into their favorite radio stories. These audio edits were actually really well made and have all the core elements of what makes a good story or story worth listening to. This means that if you could tell a full, effective, engaging, entertaining story through audio only,
suspect is armed and extremely dangerous.
The visuals will enhance the audible elements and the core story. If I can get the story working in the radio edit, the visuals very easily fall into place, almost like a paint-by-numbers coloring book. I'm sure you're starting to get the point that I'm making here. When it comes to audio podcast editing, you're making the radio edit. These core principles within telling a great story through audio editing are also shared with video editing. These are the things I'm working on most when piecing together the main content of any type of edit, and they're also the elements of video editing that I've continually honed and grown throughout my editing career. Now we just need to learn some of the basics when it comes to adding the visuals. The easiest way to work with video in your podcast edit is to use a layout. Moving to the right-hand column, select Layout, then any one of these options will be just fine as a default to start with. They all do different things like automatically switching between views of participants or a variety of grid layouts. With these default options, you're already gonna have a video ready to publish. But in this video, I would much rather go a bit deeper to give you an idea of what might be happening for the audience when you're cutting between participants or when both participants are in view at the same time. And with a deeper knowledge of this, you can make better choices even if you decide to stick with one of these automatic options. This is one of the biggest differences between video and audio is that we now need to know when to show someone talking versus listening, and how do those cuts affect the viewer's experience. There are two video editing techniques that I would highly recommend starting with when cutting dialogue. But first, watch this segment here and note if anything looks a bit strange. All right, let's talk shutter speed. Okay, yeah, it's an important mechanism in your camera. Okay, yeah. And it does two things. It controls motion blur and exposure. Okay, how so? So the mechanism that covers your camera sensor, it's called the shutter, which opens. Did you notice that at times the cut between the two people talking felt almost abrupt rather than it feeling conversational? That's because we've employed standard cuts. A standard cut is the most basic cut, a transition from one shot to the next. And not all standard cuts are meant to be jarring, but in this case, a cut is made each time someone begins to talk, which can feel abrupt and less conversational. We can soften this abruptness a bit by using the two video editing techniques I mentioned. Let's start with the J-cut. A J-cut is when you take the audio from the next shot, in this case, the video podcast guest's audio, and have it come before their video. So you hear them before you see them, like this. Talk shutter speed. Okay, yeah, it's an important mechanism in your camera. Okay, yeah. And it does two things. It controls motion blur and exposure. Okay, how so?
So the mechanism...
This comes off already a lot more conversational, as you can still see the reaction that the host is having when the guest is speaking. And alternatively, you can use an L cut, which is the opposite of a J cut. I would recommend using a combination of J and L cuts to create a more seamless conversational collaborative feel to your video podcast. An important thing to consider when making J and L cuts is to think about reaction shots. Who's reacting to what, and does that reaction bolster the moment? Bring clarity, get a laugh. These cuts are meant to best tell the story of your podcast. And in my opinion, the story you're telling is the most important aspect of any type of media. So it ought to guide the edits. Remember to also include those more jarring cuts, because that can serve the story in a way that keeps the viewer engaged. Opting to use standard cuts rather than J or L cuts can be helpful to draw attention to what's being said. It gives you that more abrupt interaction. So keep this in mind if someone is making a very important point that you want your viewer to remember. With audio only, quickly bouncing back and forth between participants talking can sound very natural, but when introducing video, well, take a look at this.
Okay, but we got to talk about ISO. It's not pronounced ISO.
What?
ISO.
ISO.
No.
Wait, what do you mean?
ISO is the correct pronunciation.
Dude, you're blowing my mind. But what do you do if there is a lot of overlapping conversation? If you did use cuts, you might find yourself creating that ping pong effect, which can be dizzying to watch. Or you extend the cuts and then you miss out on a great reaction from either individual, losing the full emotional impact of a great moment. This is the benefit of using a grid layout where you can see both participants talking and reacting at the same time without creating a disorienting, fast-paced, back and forth edit. There is a specific kind of language when it comes to visual storytelling. These visual storytelling techniques enhance the audio story that you've already created. The choices you make visually are often dictated by what you already know from editing the story through audio only. So for example, if I have a portion of my video podcast that describes a specific function on a camera, I might then add B-roll of that function being used. And to clarify, B-roll is a term used to describe supplemental footage, whereas A-roll is the main content driving the narrative. B-roll in many cases provides context or more information to clearly communicate, in this case, the function, what it looks like, how it's used, and this function might be challenging to grasp through dialogue only. With this added B-roll, we've enhanced this portion of the podcast, making it easier to understand what's being discussed. When you are choosing B-roll, think about how it can enhance the story. Does it help communicate what is challenging to understand through audio only? B-roll can also be a practical measure taken to cover jump cuts or things happening on camera that you don't want the audience to see. Jump cuts, they're not the worst thing. They can create a visual style that is deliberate and more acceptable in this day and age. If you don't have another shot to cut to, such as a close-up or a second camera with a guest in your video podcast, or even B-roll to cut to, then a jump cut is really your only option and a perfectly acceptable choice.
You can cut from one shot to the next using the same framing, or click on the clip, then navigate to crop, zoom in, and reframe. When you're reframing, try to avoid setting the edge of the frame directly on the joints, like elbows or knees, otherwise it can look a bit awkward. Another advantage of the visual medium is being able to make use of graphics. More specifically, they're great for lower thirds and captions. A lower third is a graphic placed in the bottom third of the video. This displays information like the guest's name and their title, creating additional context without the need for audio. We can also make use of captions, which are incredibly helpful for short clips you might create from your longer form video podcast. And viewers might watch these clips on social media with the sound turned off. Or at the very least, you're still communicating the main content while it's muted. To add captions, navigate to the side column, then select Captions. And from this list, you can choose your favorite preset. And just like that, you have animated captions, stylized, and matching the timing of your video. The majority of video edits I take on begin with the radio edit, focusing on the same skills that you as audio editors already have. Regardless of the editing software you use, you can apply the video editing techniques learned today for your podcast. The advantage when working in Riverside's editor is that jumping from audio to video really means the only difference is whether you get a video recording as opposed to an audio only recording. Whether I upload audio only or video, the process is the same. And with the tips included in this video, you will only become that much better at presenting visuals in your podcasts.